Have you ever heard of the nth room case in South Korea, which was one of, if not the most fucked up case that I've ever heard of, where females, and I only use that term because a lot of them weren't even adults, were sexually exploited. And wait till you find out just how many Korean men were involved in this. So from around 2017 to 2020, on the app Telegram, which is supposed to be an encrypted messaging service, multiple chat rooms popped up. And of those chat rooms, there were two major ones. The first one was called the nth room because they numbered their rooms like first room, second room, third room, aka the nth room. And the second room was called Paksa because the man who created and ran the room had a user ID called Paksa, which in Korean means doctor. And they would lure their victims with two different methods. Paksa for his room would put out an ad stating that he was looking for models, and he would ask them for selfies. He would compliment them, telling them that they look great, and then follow up asking for photos of their body. And then he would tell them that they look perfect for the role, and then he would tell them that they're hired, and then follow up by telling them that he needs a photo of their ID for employment paperwork. And then immediately after these women would send them photos of their ID, he would immediately start threatening them because he knew where they lived, and these women complied because they were scared for their safety. And in the nth room, this guy would send out messages to females of any age and tell them, hey, your photos have been leaked, check out this link below to see them, except as soon as they clicked on that link, they would be phished. And when the woman responded and were like, hey, this better not be a joke, he would respond back with, no, this is very real. I'm only telling you because I'm so worried for you. And because they clicked on the link, he would immediately have all of their private personal information like their home address, their phone number, even their family's information like their phone numbers and their address, and he would threaten them that he was going to send all of the photos to their families. And then would tell them to send more revealing photos or otherwise I'm going to send all these other photos to your family, and then would immediately start counting down to pressure them. And then he would go into these numbered rooms. This was the fourth room, and then he would tell all of his followers there, hey, I have a new slave. But in the Paksa room, he would send out their information like their location right away. And these chat rooms were filled with some of the vilest things I've ever seen. Immediately after sending her location, people would reply with things like, hey, who wants to go to her house with me? And then people would respond with that. To which other men would reply, and other disgusting things like, oh, she's not my type. Well, then put a bag over her head and make sure you stream it for us when you get there. And in the nth rooms, the guy that created and ran those numbered rooms called himself God. And he would text the woman asking them for their photos and literally coerce them to do whatever he wanted at any time that he wanted. And if you didn't comply or you ignored him, he would send hundreds of other guys into that chat to harass her. And then he would release all of the photos and videos to his followers by literally admitting that he got them by threatening the girls and that he would only release them because they didn't obey him. In fact, he even had a disclaimer at the bottom that said, if you're worried I have photos of you, they won't be shared as long as you obey me. And the other men in the groups would also do similar things, one of them who literally proclaimed this very publicly. And in some of these rooms, there would be upwards of over 1,000 men who are active at the same time. In fact, police found over 260,000 usernames that were tied to these rooms. And there are only just under 26 million men in South Korea, which means that 260,000 of those 25.7 something million men equals 1% of all the men in South Korea. Which means that if you are on the subway in South Korea and each of those cars can carry upwards of 160 people, in each of those cars, there's at least one, if not two people who could have seen your photos and videos. And thankfully, multiple journalists worked together alongside law enforcement to catch God and Paksu. The first two journalists who broke the nth room case were actually college students who were writing the article for a competition. But once they came across all of the evidence, they realized that the competition only came secondary to making sure that these women all got justice. This is who was behind the Paksa name in the Paksa rooms. His name is Cho Ju-bin, and he was 25 years old when he was caught. And Paksa was only caught because journalists followed the money. You see, Paksa or Cho Ju-bin were charging his followers on a monthly basis on a tiered system, the most expensive tier being $1,000 a month. And he made his followers pay him with cryptocurrency, which means that at some point he has to cash out. So there was a huge sting operation that went down, and it led it to this man, who, by the way, the cops arrested right after Cho Ju-bin's father was teaching him how to ride a bike. And then when he was arrested, he said that he was basically possessed by a demon. And this is the man behind God God in the Nth Rooms, Moon Young-uk, who, yes, looks very similar to Ju Bin, and coincidentally, they were only born 5 days apart on the same year. And he was only arrested because a group of volunteer hackers went into the Nth Room and told him that investigators and journalists were using this specific link to gather evidence on him, and he fell for his own trick, clicked on that link, which was a phishing link, and they got all of his information. And it ended up being that his dad owned a junkyard from where he was getting all of his used phones that were thrown out that he was cycling through on a regular basis so he wouldn't get caught as easily. Moon Young-uk was sentenced to 34 years in prison for exploiting 20 women over the course of 3 years. And Cho Ju-bin was only sentenced to 42 years for exploiting 25 women over the course of 1 year. Moon Young-uk also tried to do the same thing to celebrities and tried to give out their information as well, including stalking every single member of Blackpink. And of those thousands of other Korean men that took active part in those rooms, only 245 of those men have been arrested as of the end of 2020. Like this guy, An Seung-jin, who also decided to meet up with at least one of those minor girls. And that is part of the reason why some Korean women are also refusing to get together with Korean men, because at any given moment in public in South Korea, you are most likely with at least 1, 2, if not a handful of those men that participated in those rooms.